Hello, continuing with the laws of Rechilus, tail bearing. Again, tail bearing or Rechilus is that you go to somebody and you tell them, do you know what so-and-so was saying about you? Do you know what so-and-so did to you? That is Rechilus, tail bearing, which Hashem hates because it causes people to get in fights. So we're on chapter 2 of Rechilus, halacha number 1, 2:1. Aser l'saper rechilus afilu bifnei yachid v'kol shechem bifnei rabim. It is forbidden to speak rechilus, whether it's in front of one person or in front of many people. It's always prohibited. Beis. Afilu avak rechilus. Fimash nivar lekam b'klal ches ma'nikra avak rechilus. Even avak rechilus is going to be prohibited. The dust of rechilus. We talked about the dust of lashon hara. We're going to talk about the dust of rechilus. That is something which isn't totally tail-bearing, but it's the dust of it. It's like things that were forbidden on like a lower level, but nevertheless they're prohibited. And we're going to get into detail in chapter 8 what those are exactly. Gamkein asur l'saper b'chol gavna v'afilu im hadibur shelo shemesaper lo ma she'amar ploni alav yesh lo shnei panim. Now, even if the thing that you're saying could be interpreted in two ways. You go to somebody and tell them, you know, it's so-and-so said this about you. And what you're saying is something which could be interpreted in one of two ways. So the example that we mentioned before is that you say when it came to lashon hara, we said that so-and-so always has a fire in his house. That was the case given. So that could be interpreted in two ways. Either he always has a fire in his house because he's always cooking food to invite guests, and he's a very warm, welcoming person. Or it could mean that he's a person that likes to eat, and he's lazy, and he just sits home eating all day and wastes his time. So it could be interpreted in one of two ways. So now let's say we're going to this individual and we're saying, oh, so-and-so said about you that you always have a fire in your house. So that could be interpreted in two ways. Imhu omro be'ofen demuchach shekavanas harishon haya lignoso bevade aser b'chol gavna. He says, now, if you say it in a way, right, this statement which could be interpreted in one of two ways, and you say it in a way which is clearly negative, you're telling this guy, in a way which is clear from either your hand gestures or your facial expressions or the way you're saying it, that this individual meant to insult him, then for sure that's prohibited. Now, let's say, afal pikein, im hu maker es tivo shel zeh hasheni shehu ish nargan, hainu shehu danes chavero lekavchay v'tamid, v'chol ma shechavero osa o medaber hu omer shechivin rak lehis naged lo bezeh kamo shekaz b'zeh, o sheyesh lo levad zeh k'tzas sina beneim mikvar, v'ish kazeh eno tzarech rak limso alila al chavero osa b'chol gavna. Let's say you don't say it in a negative way. You say this thing which could be interpreted in one of two ways, and you say it in a more positive way. Right, you say that, oh yeah, so-and-so said about you that you always have a fire in your house, and the way you say it is very nice, and you're implying that it was a positive thing. But this person you're talking to is the type of guy that he always looks for the negative, and he's always judging people in a negative light, or he's looking for an excuse. He just wants a pretext to start a fight with somebody. If it's that kind of individual, then it's also prohibited to tell him this thing, which could be interpreted two ways, even though you're saying it in a positive way, because of the type of individual that you're speaking about. Or if the person that said this comment is somebody that this individual has had a fight with in the past and they don't get along, then that would also be prohibited because he will take it in the negative fashion. Now, if it's let's say it's 50-50, you say you say the guy said you have a fire in your house, and you don't make any implications by your actions and your facial expressions that's good or bad, and also this isn't the type of like angry person. Then the Chavetz Chaim says he's tzarchi and he's not sure if one is allowed to say it in that way. So we learned today, a shorter class, that Rechilus is whether it's in front of one person or if it's in front of many people. Also, it's prohibited to say something which could be interpreted in a positive way and a negative way if by your facial expressions, or you give implications that the person meant it in a negative way, or even if you say it in a positive way, if this is the type of guy who doesn't like this other fellow, or he's always looking for an excuse to get into fights and he judges people in a negative way, then you shouldn't say it to him. And again, the overarching idea is that we don't want to, through our speech, cause people to fight and cause people to hate each other, because especially this time of year, during the 9 days, it's very important that we all get along and have shalom between us, because we know that the temple was destroyed because of sinas chinam, baseless hatred between fellow Jews. So if we all work to follow these laws as much as possible, we will, God willing, have more peace and brotherhood amongst us.